You know what? We just had our spring forward. Daylight savings is in full effect, and I'm pretty pumped. I hope Punxsutawney Phil was wrong, because I can tell you we are ready for the spring. We're ready for summer. I've got big plans, and we decided to go across the pond today. Yes, we did. We're doing something a little bit different here today. Alan, it is so good to see you, my friend.
Likewise, thanks for having me on, Tony.
I just went through about 15 minutes of no internet, and you said there must have been some pretty blue language. I said no, it wasn't blue. It was every color under the rainbow. We were not happy dealing with our internet issues. But you guys don't have that in the UK, do you? You guys are just perfect.
Yeah, something like that. I was listening to you talking about
I don't
you
think
having your
so.
spring forward, Tony, and it doesn't feel like it's arrived here yet. Spring, definitely
Not
not.
yet, right? Right. I know. Well, you guys are lagging behind a little bit. Lagging a little bit when it comes to the weather, but that's all right. Listen, we've got a lot to get into today. One of the main reasons why, one of the big reasons why I really wanted us to connect here on Jobtopia. So many of us, we work with HR professionals, and I know you come out of the world of HR, and you've got this great company now that provides all kinds of services into HR. So I know your background, I know the great things you're doing out there, but give people just a kind of a flyby who you are for those who might not know you here in the States, and the kind of work that you're doing with our great folks in HR.
Okay, cool. I'm Alan Walker. I am an ex CTO, ex developer turned talent acquisition professional, HR leader, and now consulting firm owner. Our consulting firm is called Udder, and the name is a story for another day. But we are ultimately a HR tech consulting firm, and we help HR leaders and TA leaders do really cool things with HR tech.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you kept that short and sweet, because we've got a lot to get to today. And it has been a massive topic for me on the podcast. And that is, how is it that HR leaders and just people, honestly, not just in HR, but sales and marketing, how are they making the transition over into this new world of tech? I imagine this is it's a pretty big topic. I think most companies, as you know, are doing some kind of digital transformation right now as it is.
Absolutely. And if they weren't, we wouldn't have any work to do. So I'm quite pleased that many companies are doing some type of digital transformation. Our focus is the HR space, but I don't think the change that organizations are going through is limited to HR by any stretch of the imagination. We A big accelerator of this, of course, over the last 2 or 3 years has been the large language models, the generative AI tools, things like ChatGPT and Claude and similar, that suddenly have accelerated people's views of what the art of the possible is with automation and AI, and it's really disruptive. It's bringing massive change to organizations, and some are doing it really well, for the right reasons. Some are doing it really badly and for the wrong reasons. And then there's everybody else who sits in the middle who's just trying to figure stuff out. And we're the ones trying to do that with them and trying to help them through that journey.
Well, I was reading some more of the details kind of on your website, and you had mentioned this to me before, but to have that neutral set of eyes to come in and look at all the areas of a company and kind of help them understand workflow. And this is kind of how a neutral set of eyes sees how your operation's running. And oh, by the way, this is all the tech that's out there. These are the kinds of solutions that can be used to kind of smooth or improve or speed up the organization. I think is hugely important. But this is what kind of struck me, Alan, is that you've got this competing set of fear. Now, this is just my perspective, but you have the fear of, we know companies out there are adopting these new technologies, right? Could we be left behind? Are we going to be late to the party? There's a fear of that. But then you've got this very real fear of many times implementations don't go well. So the fear of change. So you're kind of thrust with both of these kind of competing fears.
I think it's an interesting point, and often why I guess organisations are bringing people like or teams like Udder in is that deciding to go through some kind of journey of change is pretty easy. To a certain degree, defining your end destination, your end goal, what do you want to achieve, what are you trying to build, is not quite as easy, but it's also not by any stretch of the imagination beyond the realms of possibility for most people to get there. With that, there's plenty of learning to be had elsewhere, looking what other organisations are doing. There's no shortage of I don't like this phrase, thought leadership, where people are going, hey, do this because so and so are doing that. But there's ways and means of learning really, really quickly about what good looks like, certainly. But the biggest challenge is, as with anything, it's always about the execution. It's actually delivering on that vision and doing it in a way that delivers the positive results you planned for it to deliver in the first place, whether that's monetary gain or profit or cost reduction or delivering a better candidate experience or user experience, whatever that might be. The key thing is you deliver against it. And we've found that technology is becoming increasingly easy to configure, easy to implement, because technology it's being built better, and it's being built with the almost non-techy in mind when it comes to actually rolling it out into an organization. What hasn't changed is the complexity around that pure change management. So taking people along the journey with you. And that's the thing that organizations typically get wrong. It's not actually pulling their organization along with them along the journey, and actually not even pulling them, then wanting to come along. It's often we hear that often people feel, and it's an old cliche, that change is being done to them. They're not being
Yeah.
consulted, they're not being involved. And getting that stuff right is as important as having the technical skills to implement a bit of tech or configure it or integrate it with your wider solution, in my mind.
Yeah. So it's not so much that the company in and of itself wants to go through the change. It's, how do you bring the everyday, frontline person along with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's let's be real here that some change does lead to disruption in an organization. It might lead to a reduction in headcount, it might lead to people's roles not necessarily being replaced but changing. And so it's all of those kind of things you need to take into account, because if you are going to, because people aren't stupid, if people see that some piece of technology is coming in and this technology being brought in to do X, Y, Z, and they look at their job description and go, hey, wait a second, I do X,
That's
Y, Z.
me.
Yeah, yeah, they're going to get it. So you've got to really handle those people with proper sensitivity, because you can't implement technology. You can't decide to implement tech on a Monday and by Tuesday it's live. There's going to be a lag. There's going to be a period of time. So you've got to take those people along on that journey, because you need them for the period of time that you're implementing.
Before they get, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no. It's a
I
real.
mean, some of them are going to, I would imagine there is some cost reduction. I think the smart companies, I think the way I would see this is you identify your talent across the organization, and really this just leads to an opportunity to move people into other areas for their own growth, for their
Yeah,
own benefit.
absolutely, absolutely, and there's
I
always.
mean, look at your journey. I mean, look at you you're a great example. You just did not continue to stay in the same space. You kept evolving, changing, adding, growing, and now you're in a position where you can see 4, 5, 6 different angles of the same problem, and that's really the benefit a company has if they can get people to move internally.
Yeah, absolutely. It's invaluable. I think where organizations can cross training people or reshaping their roles, or actually
Yeah.
giving them the tools that you're bringing in to do part of their job, for them to be the owners of those tools. So instead of them churning out 10 widgets a week, they're churning out 100 widgets a week because they're the ones operating that tool. So their productivity goes through the roof, their efficiency goes through the roof. And actually, a lot of the time, tools are replacing the more administrative parts of people's jobs, the things that are very repetitive. And some people love that work and no criticism of them, but a lot of people don't. So if you're replacing that part of the work, you're leaving a job that is often more interesting, more attractive, And if you, in the short term, as an organization, go, okay, let's see what this means to us collectively, rather than cutting real deep straight away just because this new tech's coming in. Sometimes those people are freed up to do amazing things. And that could be delivering far more. It could be supporting the organization in different ways. But if you're holding on to that knowledge and often that's very institutional, it can be super useful.
Yeah, I have really found that I'm not running away from AI. I've really started to embrace it because there's so
Absolutely.
many, so many areas in my work that I've just decided I'm going to turn. You mentioned some systems at the top. I use Grok. I'm on Grok 3 now, and I just give every task to it. I just keep refining the way it can support me, give me what I need. I don't verify. I don't just automatically trust it, but it's a great. It's like having an intern.
Yeah.
You just keep giving them. You just kind of keep giving them work. Um, as a tech implementer and kind of integrator, are there certain technologies that you're just really excited about right now?
It's such a Alan's
There's
piece
a
of
lot of
fruit,
ways
but
there's so
yeah.
many of them, right?
The
Okay,
thing
so
that
let's
gets
say
me
from
really, really excited, and it's not even specific to our world of HR and talent acquisition. It's technology, full stop. It's still some of it's fairly high level, and a lot of it hasn't been quite proven to be perfect yet. But it's the whole concept of agentic AI. So you have multi agents. So you have an AI. Let's use a
Oh,
recruitment
let's talk about
process.
the agents. Wait,
Yeah,
wait, back up and tell people what. Just back up first for a second. Explain what an agent is, and then I love this topic. So go ahead, to expand on it for us.
different people may describe this in different ways, but my view of it is an agent is an AI or a part of an AI that is responsible for a very specific part of a process in a wider workflow. So it might be in recruitment, for example, you may have an agent that's responsible for screening CVs. You may have another one that's responsible for scheduling interviews. You may have another one that's responsible for offer, the offer process at the end, and multiple ones along the way. And then sitting above all those individual agents, you would have what I refer to, and others will have as well, as a coordination layer. So it's almost like a master agent that takes in inputs from each one, passes it on to the next, and basically makes that process work really fluidly. We've seen it working pretty well in fairly simple processes. The next step is to
Such
see it
as,
working magically in highly complicated processes, which we'll definitely get there.
in which areas have you seen it work well?
The kind of ones I've just referred to in
Oh,
recruitment.
the
Yeah,
ones that you just already kind of ran through. Yeah.
absolutely. I've seen that in action with technology that's powering that. And various versions of it, off the shelf systems, but also people clipping stuff together in essence using nothing much fancier than Zapier or something similar to actually get that passover and handover between systems. So, yeah, it's very doable.
Yeah, and to me, that's just literally helping speed up your process. And I love that, particularly on the front end, particularly if you're talking about recruitment and having, lots of candidates come in. It depends on the position. Obviously, you have to be really smart about how you implement and try to use these agents and, will your market accept it?
Yeah,
You may not want to use that with a C-level person, but if you're bringing in some hourly workers and you've just gotten 100 resumes, it's probably a pretty smart idea to get an agent to go through quickly, run through a screener, and you end up with 10, 11 of them that are pretty good fit. They're actually ready to, talk to you. And then that master scheduler pushes it over to the calendars. And then, it shows up in that recruiter's
exactly.
calendar that morning. They show up, hey, I've got 10 calls to make.
I think
That's a huge time saver.
what I find really exciting about AI is not only that obviously the speeding up piece, the efficiency bit, without a doubt, the ability for AI to give every single candidate who applies a chance, because recruiters can't always do that. If you have 1,000 applicants for a single role, there is no way on earth that a recruiter is going to go through every single one of those candidates. But an AI can. So that immediately makes it a slightly fairer, leveler playing field because you're not going down fastest finger first. So who are the first 100? We'll review those, and then the other 900 are those. It's actually giving everybody a relatively level playing field. And then if you
You
move
know,
in,
I haven't heard that argument before, but I actually like that one.
it's good. Yeah, absolutely. And that, the job of a
I think
recruiter
that
is
is
to hire
good.
the best people, isn't it? The job of a recruiter is to hire the best
That
person.
is, and you just can't do that sometimes. And honestly, in some of the, I think if you're in internal talent acquisition and you're in a Fortune 500 company and you're listening to this, you're going to understand intuitively what I mean is that your company has a pretty strong brand, perhaps. So you have a magnet. You're attracting people. So you have the benefit of you can just post a job and you'll get a lot of response. So it's not do we have enough people to look through? It's we have to have a cutoff.
Mm,
You know, you'll run a job for 3 days and you'll just have a system that says we're only going to review resumes that came in, for a 24-hour period. And legally, you can do that because you've established a baseline and you're just going to look at 24 hours and cut it off. And just for this sheer volume, you can't do it. And that's a smart way though, is
mm,
go through and ask everyone to give, I don't know, you come up with a screener question. Maybe that screener question is so insightful.
exactly. And the other thing that
Maybe.
the other magic that I see from AI in a recruitment process is actually the ability to personalize that process to the individual. So actually to make it about what's important to that candidate as they go through. So if we get past the screening stage, for example, candidates have questions and sometimes lots of questions. And what's important to one isn't necessarily important to another. And again, if you've got, let's say you had 20 candidates who get past the first stage of screening, and then those 20 are going to have a recruiter interview before them, and it's narrowed down to 4 or 5 who might go to hiring manager interviews. Those 20 candidates, they're all asking lots and lots of questions, and they're all coming at things from a different angle. And again, a recruiter struggles to deal with that. And if you have an AI agent of some form that's trained on your internal policies, your company culture, your employer brand, all of that kind of stuff, those can deal with the vast majority of questions that an individual has about your organization. So again, it can deliver that super personalized support to a candidate through the recruitment process as they move through.
You know what I would love to see too is in that kind of that smart chat bot, if you will, kind of what you're
Mm.
referring to. If you could customize it to your own personality, voice, or style, kind of I like to see us get to that point where let's say you've got a team of let's say 10 recruiters that are managing the entire operation. You can spend time customizing the way your bot would interact. And
Very doable.
so the candidate would know, okay, look, Tony has given this bot as much of his information as he can. And this is, he's going to kind of relay it to us in his style. And, I think that could make it less sterile and
Yeah,
less,
absolutely. Yeah.
it makes it more authentic.
Mm. It's very doable. Fine
Maybe.
tuning. Yeah, you can fine tune an
I
agent
think you
quite
could.
easily with your time, your language, your tone of voice. Or hell, if you even went in and actually gave it your actual voice, you could make it dial people up and speak to
Oh,
them
that
over
would
a
be
phone.
wild. That would be wild. And, too, you can add, keep it professional, add a layer of, humor. I mean, you have to be very, very careful. I get it. But once you practice enough with it, you trust it. I've become I've trusted because I've used it enough times in that scenario.
Absolutely. If any of your listeners or viewers are interested, they should check out something called 11 Labs, which is
11 Labs.
11 Labs. There's a whole heap of AI
What do
tooling
they
around
do?
voice.
Is it voice?
Yeah, it's very cool. Maybe you can share the
That's
link
the
in
thing.
the
There's just so
episode
many
later.
technologies.
Oh, there's so many tools. I spend
There's
I
just
spend
too
half my
honestly, there's
day.
almost too many.
Oh, without a doubt, I spend half my day now, and too much to the chagrin of my team, I'm sure, talking to them about the latest AI tool I've found. One of the biggest, totally off topic, well, not totally off topic, kind of relevant. One of my biggest bugbears is putting together presentations. I'm okay at writing the content, quite enjoy that. I'm okay delivering said content, but the actual building of slides I find incredibly tedious, just boring. And clearly, we can use now things like ChatGPT or Grok or Claude to help us write the content for those slides, but still producing the beautiful slide deck, step too far for the vast majority of AI models. I've been playing
Right.
this week with a tool called Gamma, so it's gamma.app. Basically lets you dump your project or presentation or deck brief into it, and then goes away and builds beautiful slides for you. And I think it costs them like $6 a month, and you can build
Oh,
20 or 30 decks a month. It's blown my mind. It's so cool.
you know what? I've got they're scheduled. I haven't had them on the podcast yet, but there's another group out there that's using AI to do complex RFPs,
Yep.
because some of these RFPs can be, 20, 30, 40 pages, and they just want reams and reams of information. And so, again, eventually, once you customize your tool, this is kind of what I think, Alan. I feel like you just kind of have to find the tools that you're comfortable using and then just adopt them, embrace them, get them into your workflow, and then eventually maybe you find a replacement for one of them. But have you ever heard of Clifton Strengths Finder by Gallup?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I took this a couple years ago. My number one, this is kind of off topic, but I think it just kind of leads to what you're saying. My number one trait that always shows up is activator. And the second is ideation. So, and you were kind of mentioning that, you keep getting these new ideas, for all the new
Yeah.
tools. So I'm a big believer in act, learn, adjust. You can sit there and overanalyze until you're blue in the face. At some point, you got to get
I do.
off the dot.
Yep.
Got
Yeah.
to get off the dot. Okay, but so I know you said in general technology, you're kind of excited about it. We've mentioned a few. Are there any others that you're kind of tracking, or you kind of think are kind of interesting right now?
No, but I did have a massive smile to myself when you mentioned the RFP tool. Bit of a side story very quickly. 2 years ago, we were approached by a HR tech vendor that we've implemented their software 200 times. We know it inside out. We know it really well. And they were hitting a bit of a bottleneck with their sales process. And they said to us, look, would you be interested in helping us with some of the RFP responses we have to do the technical bit, etc.? We're like, yeah, sure, why not? And they sent me examples of their RFPs. And to your point, some of these were like 40 pages long. I was like, we can do this, but I'm not sure my team will love me for asking them to do it.
For
Um,
selling that, right?
so we spent a weekend building a very rudimentary tool that used a combination of Google Sheets to load all the questions in. That then made an API call to ChatGPT with the question itself, which in turn we made a separate call to a database of past answers that we created from previous RFPs that they'd completed, and then came back, spat it all around, and then gave us an answer to that question in the RFP. And we tested it out on 7 or 8 dummy RFPs they sent us, and we sent them back to the client and said, review these and say, would you be happy as a first wave set of answers from a sales engineer? And it blew their mind. It was just so good, so accurate, it was unreal. We then found that somebody had built a proper tool somewhere. We're like, just buy this because it does exactly what we've built. But it was
That
fun
is,
building it. It was
but
fun
you unlocked
experimenting.
it.
Yeah,
But you unlocked it. You figured
yeah,
out, what it needs to do.
yeah, exactly. It's so cool.
You fed
So
it the
cool.
right. That's pretty clever. Well, we met with an AI developer years ago because I really wanted a better matching process for the candidates.
Mhm.
And if you've ever spent any time on LinkedIn, it's a time suck,
Yeah,
right? You've got your database. Most CRMs, Bullhorn, whichever one you use, maybe even Salesforce, your data goes in and then it's dead.
yeah,
Like, how do you update it? How do you keep it clean? So you spend time going through your database and you find somebody, and then you go and you look at it and go, that's a year and a half old. That's a year and a half ago. So now you got to go to LinkedIn, you know. So
refresh.
we
Yeah,
were looking to develop some kind of a tool that just kept it constantly refreshed. always up to date. So you have one single source of truth.
Mm.
And I thought, you know what? If I spent, it was going to cost me like $100,000 just to get the very, very, very little small bit of it going. And I thought, if Career Builder or Monster or Indeed decide to do this, they'll just crush
Yeah.
some little company. So you probably made a very good move.
Yeah, exactly.
Not trying to launch that all the way.
Yeah, it's if we ever do release products, it's got to be something super, super niche, and we'll definitely do our homework to make sure we're not releasing something that somebody else has already built. But that again, I guess, opens up a separate topic, doesn't it? The ability for people to build pretty cool tools themselves now with low code and AI, and it's itself really interesting. If you've got a problem that's very niche and very specific to your organization, the ability to go off and spin something up using, like I say, a combination of low code and AI tools and large language models is just insane. We constantly have things where we might have a really challenging conundrum or a certain way that we want to solve a problem for a client where we're not going to buy an off the shelf generic system to do that. It's not quite as simple as going and knocking something up using Google Sheets or a spreadsheet or something like that. It needs something that actually is coded. We're regularly just going to a chat GPT or a Claude and going, we need a tool that does this. It's probably only going to be used once. Spin me something up. And the quality of code that it spits out nowadays, not necessarily for product level releases, but to use purely internally, purely using your own information, it's just insane.
Okay, I'm glad you've got into this topic, and I'd like to get your opinion on this because I'm sure you've seen under the cover of many organizations' database.
Hmm?
Right? You got all this data that comes in, and now they want to create automation. They want to create tools, but that database has got to be a mess. Have you seen any self-spun up programs that allow a company to normalize data? Because I'll give you a good example. My direct hire team, I think they have a horrible habit. They put everything in notes. In other words, you've got all these candidate fields, and
Yeah,
it's just so much easier for them to have this one blank open space and just type notes rather than salary going in the salary space.
yeah.
Do they want to read? Have you seen anything that can take information out and extract it and then like filter it in, put it in the right places without having to spend a fortune?
Yeah, there are I'm sure there are off the shelf tools. Exact names are not immediately coming to mind. It's not something
Yeah.
we've used internally, but from a technology perspective, the ability to solve that problem is pretty straightforward, really. It's certainly something that I know we could solve quite easily using a fairly basic but rudimentary set of tools. So if you've got the data in whatever kind of messy, unstructured format it is, but
Yeah.
you've got a record, ultimately, it could be lots of fields, it could be one big field that's full of text, it could be a mix of both of those. But again, large language models are brilliant with that kind of information. If you feed that kind of thing in and ask it to spit out structured data in return in the form of a JSON file or something along those lines, which is a structured piece of data with very determined fields and types of data that sit within it, it deals with that problem really well. So you could, let's say, for example, if you took a LinkedIn profile, if you downloaded a LinkedIn profile onto a PDF and then shot that into a large language model and told it to spit out very, very structured data where you get the name of the person, their their last 10 jobs, their top 5 skills, and what country they're in, even though that's a PDF, so it's not a database as such, but it's data, that would very quickly and very easily turn that into structured data in a very tabular type format. So without a doubt, there's tooling out there that could knock that one out of the park really simply.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that's kind of opening people's minds as to what it is capable and frankly
I got a bit
what
geeky there.
your
I do
team.
apologise, Tony.
What's that?
I got way too geeky there.
You did. Well, we can just edit that out. No, I'm just kidding. Well, look, yeah, I mean, I think this is honestly one of the reasons why you probably have as many clients as you have is because you kind of you're that you're kind of an odd duck, you know, head of HR, CTO. I mean, that's kind of a unique, you know, kind of confluence of skills. But then if once you have that JSON, as you called it, I imagine it's just some kind of an API, if you will, to then go back and fill in your database,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
absolutely. You take that
So
file and submit it directly in through API, and it would add it to your database. Really, really simple. That as a coding experience and coding complexity, that's very a half decent coder would knock that out in a couple of hours. If
yeah.
you're using a large language model to help you put it together, you're probably knocking it out in 5 minutes. Be really easy to build.
Yeah, no, I've been playing around with little tools like that, and I just keep realizing if you can think it, chances are, you know, you can code it and kind of create it. That's really clever.
The
Um,
the risk is because we don't think that anything we build internally is production ready. We wouldn't kind of pretend that it would pass any security clear, any security or anything like that with the tools that we only use internally. They're built for a very simple use case. But I agree entirely with you about the ability now to spin up coding. I've been following this concept, and developers hate it, but it's something called vibe coding, where you sit with ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or whichever tool you like, and as a layman, you basically just sit there and chat away. Tell it what you want it to build. Tell it what you want it to create.
you know what? I just heard this phrase for the first time, vibe coding.
Developers hate it because, like, no, it should be way more structured than this. It should be way more scientific. You can't just chat. How dare you? And I get
You
it.
know what? I
I
would
get
love
it.
to see that vibe coding make it over to lawyers. They would feel the absolute same way. If you talk to them, give them a couple beers,
Yeah,
pints, get them kind of loosened up. The reason they speak in that legalese is to make it so confusing that the average person just can't read it and understand, you
yeah.
know, what is the pith of it.
It's gatekeeping, isn't it? For form, it's
Pretty much. Pretty
protectionism. Yeah,
much. I mean, it's like it's protecting you're protecting your education, you
yeah.
know, all the money you've spent, you want to protect that. You don't
And I
want to
get
just
it. Yeah, I get it absolutely. But I think
that's pretty funny.
even engineers, the best ones are saying, look, you've got to be embracing this technology yourself. You've got to, if because otherwise, it'll be you that's replaced by the guy who's using AI to be an even better engineer. So you've got to be really mindful of that. I think if we don't get ahead of stuff and take ownership of these tools and actually see them as tools and as things that make us better at our jobs, the guy who sits three desks down from you, who is doing all of that, will be the one replacing you. It won't be the tools replacing you. It'll be supercharged Sam down the end of the corridor who will be
Supercharge Sam
replacing
because
you.
he knows how to use the tools and he can do your job 3 times faster. And I think that's what people need to understand. Most of the time, it's not it may not be about replacing you. It's just making you more efficient. You mentioned something earlier. You know, it takes away a lot of the administrative work. We gave the examples of the um, creating the RFPs and helping, you know, a time saver. What that allows someone to do is just focus on areas that are much more valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there's probably 20% of your job that you mean, if I could just do that 100% of my time, just think how much more productive I would be, you know, and so, but you've got these other albatrosses that just kind of keep holding you down. All right, look, I've got a curveball, maybe not a curveball, but I was thinking about this with you. Your customer is primarily the chief human resource officer, primarily. Is correct? Is that fair?
Or most senior talent acquisition person. One of those
Yeah.
two.
Okay.
They are client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's focus on for a minute the CHRO. Honestly very curious. What have you found to be the most effective way to reach new customers?
For us, our
Yeah, for
most
you personally,
yeah
because I feel like HR is the most heavily fished area.
yeah absolutely. They're overwhelmed by technology entrepreneurs, recruitment consultants, staffing consultants, etc., hitting them from every single angle, every minute of the day. It feels like, and I've worked both sides of that fence in the past. I used to be the MD of a staffing firm. I worked in house in HR and TA, so I've felt both sides of that. What works for Udder, and this will go against the grain of the vast majority of companies on this planet, is up until October last year, we didn't have a sales team, a marketing team, or a partnership team. And we grew the business to be nearly 30 people in 13 different countries across the world, with 70% growth year on year for the last 4 years. Um, we did that by just doing really, really good work and tons of referrals coming in. That might not be
Word of
scalable for
mouth.
everybody, but it's worked really well for us. Do really good work, stay close to your network, provide value, provide extras, go above and beyond. It's amazing what happens for us.
I was afraid you would say that.
You wanted my secret
Damn it.
sauce, Tony. I haven't got any. It's just do really
I
good work.
want I want that single silver bullet.
It is.
Oh, I
That's it.
mean,
Good work. Do good
we
work, Tony. That's the silver bullet.
you know what? I'm going to edit this out as well. Like most of our clients, we have gotten through referral, and I was like, I would love to discover something else because, okay, so let's talk about okay, let's lean into this for a minute. You're doing great work. You're getting referrals. Talk to me a little bit then about how do you ask for a referral? What does that look like? And maybe when do you ask? How often do you ask? Do you go back to the well? What's the, I mean,
Yeah. So
if it works, obviously you want to do it as much as you can.
we're lucky that we've got referrals, partnerships that come in from a few different angles. So we have referrals from clients that we've worked with in the past who love our work and then tell their friends, tell their peers, etc. That's great. We don't do a lot to massage that network, if we're honest. We remind them of our presence. We share with them case studies of other work we've done on a fairly regular basis. We try and keep in touch in a scalable way by regularly sending them hints and tips about the platform that we've implemented for them, maybe just general guidance about new features that have been released, whatever it might be that's a kind of value add. We keep that conversation going because I think half the battle with anything is helping people remember that you exist. And if you stop communicating with them, somebody else is going to be far noisier and they'll wedge themselves in. So I think that regular communication, so you stay front and center, is really important. We've also got some relatively tight little communities of people in our space that we have built ourselves. Using nothing fancier than WhatsApp groups. So we've built those networks. We've made them very much a peer network, so they can share problems, solve problems together, and we're there just to kind of facilitate and coordinate, etc. But again, it keeps us front and center, and they remember we exist. But we've also developed pretty good partnership networks with HR technology vendors. So vendors where we've implemented their technology into clients, we've really impressed them, and we've said, hey guys, if you come across clients that are a bit sticky or need more support or are struggling with business as usual and don't have the capacity to do an implementation themselves, point them our way. And again, you do good work a few times and it leaves them almost with no other choice other than to point them your way. So it's about having, I don't think you can rely on just pure goodwill. You do have to work for those referrals, but the starting point has got to be great work. But then after that, it's about keeping front and center and making sure people are regularly communicated with and know that you exist.
But you did bring on someone in sales, it sounds like. It sounds like you have now you've gotten to the point now, right, where you just can't
Yeah.
just maybe get that 770, YOY. You have to, do a
Well,
little something there.
we have, but actually part of it is because our sales at the moment is really primarily done by myself, my co-founder, and our senior leadership team clip into it. But almost none of us necessarily see that as our day jobs. So although we're pretty good at it, our conversion rate is great. There's a maximum amount of time we have available to do that. So for us to scale, we actually do need somebody who can talk to folk, because even if those leads keep coming in, whether they're via referrals or partners or direct outreach, whatever it might be, because of marketing, we're still going to have somebody to talk to folk. And that was our primary reason of bringing in an extra salesperson, was to do that. We have also added a marketing guy who's doing some great work for us as well. But you're right, you can get to a point purely based on referrals, but it will eventually, in theory, slow down a wee bit. So we want to make sure we're using every possible channel. But by far, still, the largest one is referral, without a doubt.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no silver bullets there, but
sorry, mate.
I think yeah, this is really the whole reason why I wanted to talk to you. I set this whole thing up. This whole thing was a ruse, and it's gone, just vaporized everything I wanted. I think I think you tapped into something there that most people, they understand, but how can you truly create a great, partnership with another company? I think you're in a unique position to do that because you are that intersection of technology and HR. So you are the implementer. So you do have, I've seen your website. It's beautiful. I mean, it's very simple, but it's a place for all your technology partners to kind of line up, and kind of funnel kind of through you, to the customer. So I think it naturally bodes well for them to kind of flip some leads to you. So I think for staffing companies, any other company, you got to try to find some other, referring partner. I do think I think it could be helpful.
Yeah, I think you've got to. Sometimes you see people building partnerships, and literally they'd sign a partnership with somebody who looked at them in a corridor as they were passing. And I think it's much better to have a smaller group of really tight partnerships where there's genuine connection. You're genuinely part of you both got a shared mutual interest in the partnership working. We won't sign any partnership with anybody where we don't think the flow, whether that's leads or opportunities or introductions or whatever you want to call them, but ultimately the commercial flow is perceived to be mutual. Might not be at the same volume, but there is opportunity both ways. Whereas we've worked with partners in the past where they only want that referral partnership to be one way, and it's to them. And we're like,
Of course.
we're not a reseller. We don't want to be a reseller. That's not why we exist. Our work is implementing HR technology and consulting with people on HR tech. So if you're not going to give us some of that, then we're not interested, frankly. So it has to be mutual. And I think then people really throw their heart and mind into a partnership and get the best out of it, rather than it just being something pretty transactional, which they become if you have too many. They just become a literal kind of transactional piece rather than
it's almost like it's a checkbox. Like
yeah.
someone within their organization is watching them to make sure that they've set up enough partnerships.
Yeah.
How many partnership deals have you signed? Well,
412.
it's not how many have I signed.
Yeah.
It's not how many have I signed. It's how effective it. Yeah. Are they good? So I guess if we start to wrap up, I'm curious for 2025. Do you have some exciting projects out there? Maybe we should reconnect in a couple months and let's hear some juicy stories.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a couple. We signed this year in January our biggest deal ever with a client to help them implement a full stack of HR technology. So everything from HRIS, ATS, LMS, and their employer record software. So that's quite exciting. The value of that was 10% of last year's revenue. So huge deal for us. And we're about to sign another one that's probably going to drop early next week that's of a similar level, possibly slightly higher than that. So we've got two big, meaty, chunky, complex projects that are super exciting that I'd love to share more about once we've kind of got through them rather than mid-flow. So definitely happy to do a follow-up.
Oh, I love it. That's kind of what I thought. I mean, I figured, there might be something out there for us again to follow up on. And, now that you and I have, now that I've introduced you to my network, I want you to come back, so they can return to utter again.
I'll tell you the story about the silly name next time, maybe.
Yes, we'll let that be a little teaser. We'll let that be our outro, next time on Jobtopia. You'll get to hear from Alan in the wild and wacky why. And you have cows. I mean, it's kind of a cool, you have a cool website, you know, but it's like, who picks a cow as their, you know, Alan does apparently.
All I'll say is, and I'll leave this word with you, custard. And that's it, no more.
Okay, there it is, folks. It has something to do with custard. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's installment of Jobtopia with Alan from Utter across the pond. By the way, what's the best way for people to connect with you? I'll have links, you know, but what's the website? What is it?
Email or LinkedIn. So email is alan@udder.rocks. Our website is udder.rocks. And then on LinkedIn, look for the bald guy with glasses called Alan Walker. There aren't that many others.
I love it. Utter rocks. That's great. That's great. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your time here today with us. Stand by for the next one.